Connection and disconnection. And this is going to lead up to something more general, which is the simultaneous negation of opposites. The simultaneous negation of opposites. So Allah is neither a body nor a particle, that is, nor is he an atom. Because a body is the result of composition. Yani, a body is when those atoms fuse together. The minimum of a body is 2 atoms, and some scholars said 8. So a body is a result of composition, and the atom accepts composition. It's not a result of composition. It accepts composition and connection. The atom is what can connect with another atom, so to make a body. And everything that is connected or accepts connection, so whether a body or an atom, it has a limit and an edge. So what do bodies and atoms have in common? They have edges, they have limits, they have volume, if you want all of that in one word. One word, what do bodies and atoms have in common? Volume. Now, what's the difference between them? The difference is that a body is a compound. An atom is not a compound. Compound means put together. Abu al-Faraj ibn al-Jawzi al-Hanbali said in Daf'u Shubah al-Tashbih, if someone says, if you clear Allah from any direction, then you negate his existence, as if his existence is impossible. We reply, that is if you are talking about something that accepts connection to bodies at one time and disconnection from them at another time. What you are saying is only true if what you're talking about accepts to connect to bodies and disconnect from them in the first place. If the thing does not accept either opposite attribute of connection or disconnection, then this does not lead to any impossibility because it doesn't apply. If the thing, meaning if the subject, whatever we're talking about, does not accept either opposite attribute, connection or disconnection, then this is inapplicable and therefore it does not lead to any impossibility. So that's the answer right there. What do you do? Very important. Very, very, very important. Someone asks you a question, whether it's a religious question or even if it's not a religious question. Answer him, start your answer, finish your answer, and stop. That's it. Don't keep talking and talking and talking. This is very important. If someone asks you a question, if you want to answer his question, you say, my answer is a creation. It has a beginning and an end. Let me start and stop. I'm going to start my answer, and then I'm going to say my whole answer, and then I'm going to finish, and then I'm going to close my lips. Very important. Very, very important. Some people ask you a question, then you answer them, and then they say, okay, keep going. You know who does that? Therapists. So then you say to him, that's my answer. And then he's not going to know what to do. So you just give an answer and then you finish. So he said, if you clear Allah from any direction, then you negate his existence as if his existence is impossible. So you say an answer and then stop talking. You say, that is if you're talking about something that accepts connection to bodies at one time and disconnection from another, and disconnection from them at another. If the thing does not accept either opposite attribute, then this does not lead to any impossibility. Intaha, that's it. So then you wait and see his reaction. Maybe he might say, I don't even know what you just spewed out of your mouth right there. So don't talk about this issue then. What you're saying is not true. If they say, you are requesting submission to something incomprehensible, you are requesting of me to submit to something that I cannot comprehend, then we say, if you mean by comprehension, imagination, when you said this is something incomprehensible, if what you really mean is this is something unimaginable, And this does not apply to Allah. And if you mean that this argument is irrational, though, that is not the case. That is not the case. Let's give that an exclamation point too. So that's the answer. Al-Amidi said in Ghayatul Maram that the inability to imagine what is neither inside or outside of the world, although its existence is confirmed by indisputable evidence and believing in it is obligatory, like one imagines different pictures and images, is not invalid. It's not invalid. I read this wrong last time anyway. It's not invalid. Al-Amidi said in Ghayatul Maram that the inability to imagine what is neither inside of the world nor outside of the world is not invalid. The inability to imagine it, although its existence is confirmed. Yani, its existence being confirmed doesn't mean you have to be able to imagine it. Although its existence is confirmed by indisputable evidence, and although believing in it is obligatory, just because you're obligated to believe in it doesn't mean it has to be imaginable. The inability to imagine what is neither inside or outside of the world, like one imagines different pictures and images, is not invalid. Because not everything that must be believed is imaginable. Because not everything that must be believed is imaginable. If that were true, then it would not be valid to confirm the existence of created attributes, even created attributes that are not realized by the senses, such as knowledge, power, and will. How can you imagine that? You can't imagine it. Because they're not imaginable. So you're going to say believing in knowledge and power and will, that's impossible. This is irrational. No, you're not going to say that just because you can't imagine it. Our creed is not by delusions or imagination. Rather, it is by what the sound mind confirms, because the sound mind is the religion's witness. The sound mind is the religion's witness. It means the religion doesn't depend on the sound mind. The religion came, and then the sound mind looks into this religion and says, correct. I judge this as correct. Arguing that ascribing a place to Allah is natural to any child and known by intuition is untrue. You might hear that from a Wahhabi. He would say, even the children know that God is above us. And he would say, knowing that God is above us is intuitive. Even the animals know. If he told me even the animals know, I'd say to him, how you know the animals know that? I don't even know what he's going to say to that. I'll say to him, you can talk to the animals? Or are you one of them? And as for the child, you say, we don't take our creed from the children. That's a Wahhabi. To cite the children as their authorities, and also to cite kuffar. Don't you know the Wahhabi would say, even Pharaoh knew that Allah was above us, because he commanded his prime minister to build the tower up into the sky so that he could go look upon the God of Moses. That's in the Quran. So what do you say to him? Say to him, so you take your creed from a kafir, and then he's not going to know what to say. Subhanallah. Praise and thanks be to Allah that he didn't make us amongst those people. They take their creed from the children and the animals and the kuffar, instead of taking from the Quran and the Sunnah and the Muslim scholars. So arguing that ascribing a place to Allah is natural to any child and known by intuition is untrue. It's a weak argument. Because what is known by intuition is not opposed by most intellectuals, and most intellectuals oppose the ascription of a place to the eternal. Who are the intellectuals? The intellectuals are the Sunnis and includes Mu'tazila. Intellectual doesn't mean guided. So intellectuals, the Uqala, that includes the Sunnis and the Mu'tazila and the philosophers. Those ones would be deemed like Uqala because of their reliance on their minds, as opposed to others who are not Uqala, intellectuals, Christians, Jews, idol worshippers, Hindus, for example. Hindus very much not intellectuals. If you hear any of the stories of the Hindus, their fairy tales, that is, you know these people are not intellectuals. Subhanallah. Those people, they worship the elephant, the six-armed elephant-headed man. And if I'm not mistaken, his mom is the purple six-armed lady. So most of the intellectuals do not oppose something that's intuitive. Not all of the intellectuals are guided, though. And most of the intellectuals oppose the ascription of a place to the eternal. They don't say God is in a place. You could talk to any person and just explain to him step by step that God exists. And he existed eternally. And eternally there wasn't any place. And then after he created the place, he still exists without a place. And then the person is going to say, wow, that's right. That's impressive, actually. That's profound. Not a Wahhabi, though. Wahhabi is going to say, what? That's impossible. Because he's not an intellectual. Had Allah been in a place eternally, then Allah would not be its creator. Because it would be eternal. Something eternal is not created. And if he is not the creator of a single thing, then he is not the creator of anything whatsoever. Because anyone who didn't create something didn't create anything. Whoever created anything created everything. Since he is the creator of everything, then his existence without a place is confirmed in eternity, because place is not eternal. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, "Kan Allahu wa lam yakun shay'un ghayruh." Allah existed and there was nothing existing other than him. Or Allah was and there wasn't anything else. Like we said, what's a Wahhabi going to say to this hadith? He's going to say, he might say, don't bring those weak hadiths. That's his wickedness and his daring to talk without knowledge. Because his sheikhs never taught him this hadith. They never would. And the only time they're going to mention this hadith to him is after he meets one of us, and then we silence him and he doesn't know what to say. And then he's going to go back to his sheikh and say, they told me a hadith that Allah existed and there wasn't anything else. And then his sheikh's going to have to tell him, yeah, that's a real hadith actually. And before that, he's going to dare, because he never heard the hadith before, he's going to dare to say, don't bring those weak hadiths. Or he might say, I never heard that hadith. If he says, I never heard that hadith, tell him it doesn't matter that you never heard it. That doesn't mean anything. What does that prove other than the fact that you're ignorant? And as for the hadith being weak, don't lie. Don't talk about the religion without knowledge. Don't say what you don't know. This hadith is narrated by Al-Bukhari in Sahih Al-Bukhari. So what else he might say? He might say, oh, this hadith doesn't say Allah exists without a place. Give me a hadith that says Allah exists without a place. What he means is, give me a hadith that only says those words. That's because he doesn't want to think and because he doesn't want to accept. So you say to him, it's not a condition that I give you only those words. This hadith means that. He's going to say, it doesn't say that though. I don't want your deductions. I don't want your extractions. Just give me a verbatim hadith that's saying what you say. And then if you were to say to him, well, do you have a hadith, for example, that says Allah doesn't wear shoes, Allah doesn't wear a bow tie, Allah doesn't do a backflip, then there's a good chance that he'll say, well, if Allah didn't confirm it or deny it, then we don't confirm it or deny it. That's because he really does compare God to the creations. Really, he is a mushabbih. He is an anthropomorphist, and he is a mushrik, actually. He just has the appearance of a Muslim only. Wahhabis are like Jews. So I'd say to him, this hadith is clear. It's just that you don't want to think. That's your problem. It's not a condition for me to produce for you an ayah or a hadith that gives you the words that you wish them to have. The hadith is clear. Kan Allahu wa lam yakun shay'un ghayruh. Allah was, and there wasn't anything else. Since the place is something other than Allah, this is proof that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam confirmed Allah's existence without a place. So that's the hadith. That's one hadith. So if he were in a place, that would have only been after the creation of places. So that's why if you were to say to a Wahhabi, well, Allah exists without a place because he existed eternally and there wasn't any place, the Wahhabi would say, well, that was then. What about now? Because he's such a kafir. He doesn't believe in Allah. He doesn't believe in an eternal, unchanging God who's not like anything. Had he been in a place after the creation of places, he would have changed and gone out of his eternal status. Then if he changed and went out of his eternal status, he'd have to change back so that he could be eternal. That's all blasphemy. Change is a sign of createdness, and createdness is impossible for the eternal. And eternal basically means uncreated. They also said, since Allah exists, then he is either connected to the world or disconnected from it. And whichever is the case, a direction is confirmed for him. The answer is that connection and disconnection are not conditions for existence. Do you not see that a property is not described as touching the particle or being separate from it, or touching the atom or being separate or being apart from it? Like color. Color is a property. Being a property means it's not made of atoms itself. So if it's not made of atoms itself, that means it can't be touching the atoms. If it were touching the atoms, that would mean it has its own atoms. And it's not also separate from the atoms, because that would also mean it has its own atoms, so to be filling its own space, so that it could be separate away from the particle. So a color and any other property, a flavor, for example, a texture, is not described as touching a particle or being apart from it. That's something that we can witness in existence, where connection and disconnection don't apply. Rather, connection and disconnection are conditions for what? Not for existence, for composition and limitation, which are all impossible for the eternal. Connection, disconnection, and direction are the descriptions of a body. And the evidence that he is not a body has already been established. Which is in the ayah, لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ. Unlike him, is there anything? Here, Allah generalized the negation of resemblance to anything. And he did not specify anything over anything else to be dissimilar from him. He said everything is dissimilar to him. That means nothing is similar to him. Yani. He said nothing is similar to him. That means everything is dissimilar from him. Everything is dissimilar to him. He is dissimilar to everything. If Allah were connected to anything, he would have uncountable similars. Likewise, if he were connected to anything, and if he were attributed with a permanent or a temporary movement, or a permanent or a temporary stillness, or if he had a limit, he would have uncountable similars. Had Allah been outside of the world, he would be parallel to it. That means across from it, in some direction. Across from it in one direction or another, having either its size, being the same size as it, or being smaller than it, or being bigger than it. And this gives Allah a measure and parts. What would a Wahhabi say to this talk? He would say, this is the kalam. Where'd you get all this? Where's this from the sunnah? Talking about temporary and permanent movements and temporary and permanent stillness, and talking about atoms and properties and parallelism. Where you got all that? You say to them, from the Quran, like when Allah says, وَيَتَفَكَّرُونَ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. They think about the creation of heavens and earth. They ponder on that. So thinking about creation of heavens and earth leads you to what? Leads you to say, for example, here I am within heavens and earth. And if I just look, I see around me many objects. There's building, there's trees, there's cars, there's sidewalk, etc., etc. There's grass, all these objects. These objects, if I think about them, they are made of atoms, particles, and I can witness that they are moving or still, and that they have sizes. Some are bigger than the others, and some are smaller than the others, etc., etc., etc. Even this, the Wahhabi doesn't do it. He doesn't think about creation of heavens and earth. So this would give Allah a measure and parts, and that is a negation of having no beginning. Wa subhanallahi wa bihamdihi. Inside and outside. If Allah were in a place, he would have many similars. Had he been within the world, inside that is, he would be among the types of things within the world. That right there is very strong. Had he been within the world, he would be one of the types of things in the world. And then whatever would be applicable to them would be applicable to him. If he were outside of the world, then he would either be connected to it or disconnected from it. And if he were disconnected from it, then that would either be by a limited distance or an unlimited distance. The second of which is impossible, to be disconnected by an unlimited distance. That's when we say by a limited distance or an unlimited distance is only listing the mental options, not that all those options are actually possible. And in all cases, Allah would be ascribed with specifications, and thus he would be in need of a creator. The Mujassima, yani the anthropomorphists, among whom are the contemporary Wahhabiyya Mushabbiha, those Wahhabi God comparers, so-called Salafis, they say Allah is not within the world. He is outside of it. That's what they say. They say he is over. He is over the world. And they mean outside of it. Beyond the world, outside of it, they say he's over it. And they say that imitating their predecessor, Ibn Taymiyyah, who said in Ar-Risala at-Tadmuriyah, that means the Palmyran treatise. The Palmyran treatise. I heard that someone translated and refuted this document in English. What did Ibn Taymiyyah say in his Palmyran treatise? He said, فَيُقَالُ لِمَنْ نَفَى الْجِهَةِ. It is said to whoever denies the directions for Allah. أَتُرِيدُ بِالْجِهَةِ أَنَّهَا شَيْءٌ مَوْجُودٌ مَخْلُوقٌ. Do you mean by directions some existing creation? فَاللَّهُ لَيْسَ دَاخِلًا فِي الْمَخْلُوقَاتِ. If so, then Allah is not contained in the directions. أَمْ تُرِيدُ بِالْجِهَةِ مَا وَرَاءَ الْعَالَمِ. Or do you mean by direction what is beyond the world? فَلَا رَيْبَ أَنَّ اللَّهَ فَوْقَ الْعَالَمِ مُبَايِنٌ لِلْمَخْلُوقَاتِ. There is no doubt then that Allah is above the world, disconnected from the creations. So that's creed of Ibn Taymiyyah, and the Wahhabis take that creed. So they said, since Allah exists, he would either be inside the world or outside of it. And he is not inside of it, so he must be outside of it. And by necessity, he must be in a direction in comparison to it. The answer is, being inside the world or outside of it is not a condition for existence. It is a condition for whatever has a direction and a location. Being inside of the world or outside of the world is a condition for anything that has a direction and a location, not for anything that has existence, as said by Al-Amidi. Whatever is described as being inside or outside is a body with sections and parts. Whatever does not have parts or pieces would not be ascribed with being inside of something or outside of it. Al-Amidi said that saying that negation of connection and disconnection is irrational, to saying, here, let's just make it italicized. Saying negation of connection and disconnection together at the same time is irrational is only true of what has a direction and a location in the first place. Or else to say Allah is either inside or outside of the world is what is irrational. Wa subhanallahi wa bihamdihi. And so now here we are at this section, this last section we'll read for today, which is a synopsis of all of what we've been saying. The simultaneous negation of opposites. The simultaneous negation of these opposites does not negate his existence. Yani, this simultaneous negation of opposites, if you understand what we are saying, then this is what makes it very clear for you that Allah's reality is beyond our comprehension. The simultaneous negation of these opposites does not negate his existence. Just as the inanimate objects exist without being knowledgeable or ignorant, that simultaneous negation of those opposites does not negate their existence. Inanimate things like the wall, it's not knowledgeable and it's not ignorant. The validator of knowledge and ignorance is life. So once it was that the wall was lacking life, then it lacked both knowledge and ignorance. And we're not going to say it's ignorant because it's not knowledgeable. We're going to say it's not ignorant or knowledgeable because it's not alive. The validator of being connected or disconnected, or being inside or outside, is having a body. So absolutely denying the simultaneous negation of opposites is invalid. It can only be denied when the two opposites alternate on the subject. As for not being alternatively applicable to the subject, like motion and stillness alternate on a body, so it's not valid to negate both of them from the body at the same time. So as for not being alternatively applicable to the subject, that means going back and forth on the subject, moving, still, moving, still, moving, still, connected, disconnected, connected, disconnected. As for not being alternatively applicable to the subject, these opposites, or the categorical, the absolute inapplicability of either of them to a subject, there is no conflict in negating both opposites at once. Yani, you need to understand what makes the opposites valid or necessary for the thing. What is it that even validates those opposites? If what validates those opposites doesn't exist, then the opposites won't apply. What validates being inside or outside is being a body. So if the subject is not a body, then being inside and outside won't apply. What validates ignorance and knowledge is being alive. So if being alive is lacking, then knowledge and ignorance will both be lacking. For example, it would not be said that a wall is blind or seeing because it's not alive. There is no conflict in the inapplicability of the two opposite attributes. The scholars of Islam made this point very clear. وَسُبْحَانَ اللَّهِ وَبِحَمْدِهِ.